Good evening, televiewers. You're welcome to Prime Hour, the first for this week. And this Monday edition, we're going to be looking at the international community and its implication in the ongoing crisis in the southwest and northwest regions. We have seen them shift positions from time to time according to the developments out here in either the southwest or the northwest, and we are asking the question whether this constant shifting of positions is helping matters out there or worsening the situation. We also are going to be asking the question as to whether Professor Limunga Njeuma, the pioneer vice chancellor of the University of Boya, is the lone concerned Fako elite with respect to the Fako land grabbing saga. She has severally written about the issue, and we're asking the question as to whether others should not join her so that the lands that are available in Fako can be preserved and used in the interest of the Fako man. We are going to be discussing this with our panelists. Fah Elvis Tayong is the Under Secretary for Communication for the Cameroon Renaissance Movement. He's in the house with us. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Kum. Good evening to Samah, who is present here. Of course, we have level-headed panelists who are on board today. And a special good evening to all those who are watching us here, especially those from Gunuku village and the my font, that is font Dr. Fomiki Walters, and the others from Baba One, that which is my second home, and a Royal Majesty of Bemi village, and as well as His Majesty Royal Highness Fonteren of Barakwe. Well, that's it and done with our Royal Majesty of Kukum village, Krukum, that's from Batibo, which is another, my third home. I think we'll be contributing our modest contribution towards nation building. We will be trying our best while sending greetings to all the CRM militants, including President-elect Professor Maurice Kamto.
Okay, we also are in the company of Mr. Samah Abang-Mugwa. He is a political commentator.
A social and political commentator.
A social and political commentator and the publisher of...
the CEO of Unamumu Don't Do platform.
Good evening, welcome.
Thank you, Leo. Greetings to Fah. Greetings to the millions of viewers of my Media Prime. Greetings to Mogamwans of Batibo Subdivision. Leo, I had an interesting experience 2 weeks ago when I traveled to Yaoundé, and out of curiosity and with steadfastness, I was able to pay a visit to the 2 prisons in Yaoundé.
Okay. Maximum
and Central Prison. Mm-hmm. And I want to express gratitude to the penitentiary officers who were on duty, who offered me unrestricted access to those I went to visit. Mm-hmm. My cousin who is at the Central Prison, and I insisted on visiting one of the
Neraten.
Mm-hmm. And I had the singular opportunity of meeting Barrister Shufai Blaise, mm-hmm. who was a friend in Boya then, and a certain Julius Ayutabe Seseko.
You met him?
And Dr. Windim and another. And I also was lucky to have stumbled on my former professor at the University of Yaoundé too, of professor and expert in geostrategy, Professor Alain Foge and Bibu Nisak. And whatever we discuss is not for the public, but I think that it was an interesting encounter that changed my perception of prison life, mm-hmm. and political activism in this country. Greetings to the house.
Okay. We are awaiting the arrival of Lucas Nji, who should be coming in from Boya. We also are struggling to get in touch with Mr. Maina Gana, who is based in Uganda. Is there already. Good evening and welcome. We're glad to have you. There is.
Good evening, sir. How are you today?
Okay, we're glad to have you. It's been a while. There are issues with the sound. I'll start with you, Mr. Samah, Abang-Mugwa. The international community, many persons are still not understanding what is happening with respect to their stance towards what is happening in Cameroon, especially in the southwest and northwest region. Some people are asking whether they are trying to be calculative to see where the pendulum is tilting towards.
If you say they're trying to be calculative to watch and see where the pendulum tilts, I wouldn't want to agree with that, because it's as if the pendulum tilts independently on its own.
Okay.
You shouldn't, there we would be undermining the influence or the invisible hand of that same international community in tilting that pendulum in the direction that they want. One thing we should understand, and we should admit, we should not be naive in thinking that the infamous international community is a neutral observer, is a neutral umpire. Remember that the said international community is made up of nations with interest. And unfortunately, I wasn't a student of history, but I retain the dictum of the late French president, Charles de Gaulle, and who said nations, states don't have permanent friends. They have permanent interest. And so their friends would change depending on their interest. And so I think that the international community, as you may see, it knows exactly where their positions lie. They know where their interests lie, and they know where and in what way they like desire to intervene. Whatever game the so-called international community is playing, I know particularly you would be making reference, or you're making allusion to the recent tweeting outings of the American diplomat Thibault Nagy, who, as I would want to see, has been trying to fuel the crisis by coming out with some inflaming tweets. Now it depends on which position or which pedestal the warring parties in Cameroon have placed their foot. One thing I am very sure of from my studies of international relations and geostrategy is that diplomacy is never practiced in the open. Everything about diplomacy is about double standardness, and that is what they are playing. I've had the opportunity to listen to the former Ivorian president, Laurent Gbagbo, and if you listen to the circumstances that led to his overthrow and his arrest, and the role that was played by America, the American ambassador to Ivory Coast at the time, the American Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton at the time, and the American President, Barack Obama at the time, then you would understand that it is not all about goodwill. It is not all about
the interest,
morality. It is not all about being God-fearing and godly and being humanistic. It is about interest, the interest of the nation that you represent. I think after Fah would have come in, I'll be able to elaborate better on that.
Yes, Fah Elvis Tayong, do you understand the posture taken by the international community since the advent of the ongoing conflict in the southwest and northwest region?
Well, I think the international community is acting at the right time. They will be moving to where the pendulum is swinging. That's how it operates. Now, when conflicts occur, it's unfortunate that with the international community, just like with international organizations, they always have some time to act after having observed the gravity and the degree of the conflict in question. You realize that even when we're talking about the crisis like in the Central African Republic, when Francois Bozize was ousted, you know, it took some time because they monitored Now, with the coup d'etat that was going on, they realized that it arrived. There's what they call a red zone. And before the red zone, there are other minor stages that warrants international community to come in from different angles. That's why from the beginning of the early stages, the moment you see it high and they see it not high according to their ratings, now what happens is that they start making utterances. They will visit your areas, they'll make some comments, and the comments are on two fronts. There are official comments and unofficial comments. And that's what happens in the diplomatic world. And just like what Mr. Samah said, it functions with permanent interest. Now, there are times that even declarations are taken to the international organizations, the states, they discuss at the backstage. Now, what is your take on this? Now, this one tells them, no, I have interest in Cameroon. Now, this one said, but you know that why you have interest in Cameroon, I also controlled maybe Equatorial Guinea, and your business is there. So what do? We come to a compromise. In that case, there are things that I'm supposed to say outrightly that I will not say because you are protecting my own interest too in another respective country, which we have agreed. So at the end of it, permanent interest comes in. Now, what happens is that at each point in time, I've gotten many persons say that Chubo Nagi is confused, Chubo Nagi is this and that. Now, he's simply playing the diplomatic dictum, meaning that he's simply responding with the change of the event. Now, if you imagine that by the moment that a humanitarian crisis reaches another level and reaches an alarming rate that is closer to red, you obviously start getting diplomatic missions visiting you by force. The moment it arrives at the level of red, both parties that are identified as being involved in the crisis, that is fast causing what they call human rights abuse and all the like, at that level, will start getting responses from the diplomatic community, which, as I said, sometimes it will be by utterances, it will be by sending special envoys directly and indirectly. Now, most people don't understand that when you see envoys in Yaoundé, and probably the media is around, there are times those envoys come without the media being present. There are times that telephone calls, they take place between diplomatic services and the host nation of the state crisis, which are not made open. It is at this level that several decisions are made before you now finding it coming into the limelight. So it becomes a little bit complex for people who want to analyze at a distance or want to carry what we call quick analysis. Because if you look at Chubo Nagi, number one thing is for sure that people have made efforts or comments about his tweet. But what I look at his tweet is how realistic is his tweet. Now, if you look at the level in which we are, truth be told that from the ongoing crisis, we realize that the issue of special status, the issue of decentralization will never solve the crisis. I repeat, will never solve. And I can explain from here, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, till thy kingdom come, as to why. So, when proponents who have watched, like in the African affairs, the escalation of violence, realize the unfolding situation in Cameroon, they have every reason to put their own idea, like telling you that the way I'm seeing it. Because if you look at Chubo Nagi's analysis, it is based on the historicity and the context under which we are, which means that if the fundamental problem of the Anglophone crisis is the issue of governance, it means that the approach of Chubo Nagi has to do with the issue of governance, which tells you about a federation or total separation. Now, you realize that unfortunately, for some other analysts, they think that if the fundamental issue in the crisis has to do with governance issue, they think that if they bring special status, if they bring disarmament, or they bring bilingualism, or they bring whatever commissions they call, and many are still coming, that is only God himself who knows how this commission functions, they think is a solution. No. A square peg in a square hole tells you that if you identify an issue, if you go to the issue in Rwanda during their genocide period, it was obviously an issue, was an ethnic issue. And with any issue, and any approach was equally given to it. And that's why you realize that they had to work on reconciliation, which took place after the ceasefire. And before you know it now, what is the president doing? He's carrying out what they call integration of persons. Those who are considered the minority, now they are being brought in so that they have a greater share in the national government. By so doing, preventing a return to the scenario that brought Rwanda in a genocide. So each sphere of influence in terms of conflict has its peculiarity. So too is the issue with Cameroon.
Okay. Mr. Maina, Gana, good evening and welcome.
Thank you, Leo.
Yes, you're following discussions out here. You are reading of the positioning of the international community towards what's happening in Cameroon so far.
Hello, It's good, and it said it's coming from Kibonagi, who is the African Affairs. We want first of all to make sure that we verify from him. Can be also somebody else. It is true, has he been mandated with the United States, or he just come his own way to say what he's going to say? Because this is a country, this is a nation, and we want to make sure that you want to vote yourself in the nation, you have a real mandate that you want now to open discussion, government to find a solution, for one. And number two, when we talk about international community, first of all, when we look at the reality, you know that the African Union is a group of countries. And our country, like Cameroon, until now, either we like it or not, the majority of our decision is taken by us, who is the permanent member of UN. Maybe they have not taken the bold option to sit down to say, discuss about Cameroon issues, or necessarily have to go to the government. We don't know. We need to find out, because we are talking about nation and politics here. Not about we talking on the street basis. You see, United Nations have a permanent seat, and France is a member, and France also is a grant for those French who are Cameroon among them, and also Anglophone are part of Cameroon. This one, and number two, people also to understand some of the situation going on. Africa have a lot of problems that the United Nations is sinking a lot of budget, and they don't even have this budget. You can see the example in Congo DRC. It's one of the biggest holes that the United Nations is spending a lot of money, but there is no solution. And we all know that this war now, war has never solved a solution, has never bring any solution in any country. It's making war. The example we see the Afghanistan, the Pakistan, or the Iraq, everywhere, the war has never solved any problem. At the end of the day, just the end of the day, after it, we lose our families, credibility, our friends, our moral value, the economy. At the end of the day, is there any strategy Cameroon has put on for the international community to say that we need you to invent or not? This is the question we need to know. Because let us not forget, Cameroon is a nation, and the nations can maybe to the level of the R they have not called yet, or they never discussed. And we can say that lack of governance, and there is also proper communication may have not party. Is there any lack of understanding? The question we need to debate is that where is the loophole? What lacking? Why they are not taking the bold step?
Mr. Gana, your lines are not very, very clear. Something needs to be, I don't know, something needs to be fixed. Good evening to you, Gaba Nkwo, and to you, Afinu. Samuel Oben, good evening to you. Yano Brown, good evening to all of you watching us on our Facebook handle. Now, are things not a little bit complicated today compared to how things operated in the past when Russia actually was just watching? Russia had no direct interest in African affairs, China also, but today we have China highly involved in activities in Africa. We see what Russia is doing in the Central African Republic. They are getting to Mali. Is that not also making things complicated? We are talking about the international community is twisting tongues. We have people
that brings me back to what I said, that it's a matter of interest. But let me say that I picked out one interesting thing from what Mr. Gana said, in spite of the poor network, that let us not look at the outings of Thibonagi as the position of the United States, especially given that he was a diplomat under the Republican government, which is no longer in power, and so he is no longer within the corridors of American diplomacy directly. And so he is neither speaking for the American Parliament nor for the American State Department. So I'm sure he was using his personal private handle and communicating in his own name. And in as much as his words may carry weight at some consultative level, given that he has had more than 40 years of diplomatic experience. But what he says now, Sanangash Kalwi. That said, I think the game he is playing, and the game a good number of them, because he is not the only one. The game a good number of them are playing, if falls within the context of what I would call diplomatic blackmail.
Okay.
When we were growing up, Leo, your elder brother does something mischievous, and in the evening you twist him and you ambush him and then tell him that if you don't give me this, I'll report to mom what you did. Now, look at what he is doing. He is tickling the government of Cameroon, which is all about diplomacy. Tickling the government so that the government feels like it is sitting on a hot seat. The recent outings are quite anti-government. And there are those that go a long way to embolden the separatists and give them the impression that the international community is coming in hot and it is placing the government on the hot seat. Again, just as you said, that takes us to our next door neighbors, the Central African Republic. If not of Russia, I wonder if the present regime in that country would still be in place. And I wonder if that regime would have been able to withdraw from the French the things that they have already withdrawn. The Central African Republic, and part of it that extends even to the east of Cameroon, was like the French pack, where they could walk in and they do whatever they could do in terms of resource exploitation. But with the coming of Russia there, France has to sit up. With the appearance of Russia in Mali, I'm very sure very soon in Guinea, because those are two countries that are trying to also raise their eyeballs against the French. So it already tells you that it is a game of interest, and it is a game that is played. I have always enjoyed this piece by this, I think, don't know if this guy is Ivorian, Tikenja Fako, who says is on diviser le monde. They have divided the world into spheres, where America thinks that it is a French interest. America would, because of their NATO connections and Western Bloc connections, America would not want to venture very much into where it is, apart from defending France and getting for themselves what they can get in. Just as Mr. Fah said, it has to do with the interests of the nations. And I think that it's unfortunate because the much trumpeted sovereignty and independence of third world nations is exposed in such situations, because we end up being remote controlled, we end up being blackmailed, we end up being intimidated to play back into the hands of those from whom we thought we had independence. The international community doesn't solve problems in other countries. I've never seen that. What they do, they control the problems within limits and levels that are suitable for them to bargain and get what they want to get. At the onset of the Anglophone war in Cameroon, Leo, I asked another panelist on another sister TV station, when you see a humanitarian organization, so-called humanitarian organization, comes to Boya and rents a mansion, an entire story building of about 10 apartments, and pays up front for 5 years, does that not tell you something? That they have already projected that this thing is not going to last within 12 months, that it is going to last for 5 years renewable, and they have come to stay. And they are coming to stay doesn't really, it shouldn't be seen as they have foreseen that the problem will last. They know that as long as the interests of those who have sent them, those humanitarian organizations are funded by who? By their government, by lobbies, by interest groups. And so I simply just think, unfortunately, the opposing camps in the Anglophone crisis take the outings of persons like Tibo Nagi, and they interpret them and blow them out of unnecessary proportion as it suits their narratives. If you follow his recent outings, they have mostly been propagated by separatists, and they propagate them on their platforms and their fora, and they jubilate. I am very sure that very soon, unless the government of Cameroon has understood the game, very soon you would also see an outing by the Minister for Communication stating the position of the state of Cameroon. But again, as I said, it is just a game of tickling. You tickle, tickle the government of Cameroon, so that as I heard Fah say, when it comes to official and unofficial negotiations and bargains, they can easily get more concessions from the government.
Okay, Fah Elvis Tayong, what can we expect the international community to tell the Cameroon government, for example, that they have not said already when the UN Secretary General came visiting the President of the Republic, when the Commonwealth Secretary General came visiting, La Francophonie came visiting, the AU and all of them? What is it that we expect them to now tell the government that they had not done so?
Well, the gimmicks change over time. When they came in, the crisis was still at an early stage. So obviously, the language at that stage will be a lighter language, in the lighter mode. Please try to see what you can do, try to see how you can talk with the people and fight things like that. Now, with the issues of AK-47s coming in, rocket launchers coming in, and the burning of houses like in Kikaikom, in Kumbo, and other areas coming in, it gives another triggering effect, which means that what they'll be saying now will no longer be on the issue of just see what you can do. It will be an aspect of giving you things that can happen if you don't attend to the issues or address them seriously. So now you realize now that the message that they'll be bringing, if the political committee comes now into the Cameroon government, will be messages that move with consequences. If you don't do this, we think that we can arrive at this stage, which will complicate you to handle if you don't do like this. So now realize that in this case now, the consequences that must accompany or that accompany now is creating more of an awareness. Now, as I said, Chubo Nagi spoke as a person. But if you look at his statement, you discover that it gives you some consequences. That's the phase where we are. And that's the phase that the diplomatic committee will be using equally. Now, if you don't solve it now, know that you end up having that two things from the level where we see. You have either federation or separation. Now, at the same time, if we allow the thing to escalate and get to a point whereby the AK-47s are in disorder, implementation devices are in disorder, and maybe armored vehicles are owned by the separatists at that matter, and other technological ideas for warfare comes in, it will start being an aspect that now we are thinking that if you don't handle it, it will be more of separation. Now the story of federation will cease. Now you discover that as the steps move on, that's why the dance, the rhythm of the dance depends on those who are playing it. Now, if those in the bushes decide to become adamant till, it means that it will also dictate how the government will act, which means the government too at a point in time will want to use force because now they don't want to succumb or don't want to play a second fiddle by saying that, how can these non-state armed actors push us to the war? Now, in that retaliation, it will leave us now to another level. I talked about getting closer to red zone. We have the yellow zone, we have the white, we have what we call the brown, we have what we call the yellow, and the red zone, which is above it. Now, if we are getting towards the red zone, it becomes complex, as I said, because in this case, when they come in, their language will become, we call it more harsh.
Yeah, but don't you also see that the international community, as we speak, when we look at geopolitics, especially in Africa, is divided?
Yes, it's divided, as I said, Mr. That's why I said that what happens in the Berlin conference is taking place now. The difference with Berlin conference is that they partition the countries in an official meeting. Now, the Berlin conference has come back in a different way, whereby I talk with you backstage, where your interest is, and you talk with me, and we see where we come to a consensus. Now, if you look at Russia coming into Africa, Russia is not coming because Russia likes Africans. China is not coming with AIDS in abundance in Tanzania, in Mozambique, because China loves Africans. No. Everybody has an agenda and an interest. China will want to come in because he's looking for his market and where to dump his population. That one is a sure thing. Now, Russia will come in. Why? Because Russia is not only looking for economic expansion, but Russia's problem is to challenge the economic world power. Therefore, Russia, at the back part of his mind, wants to settle scores with America and France. Why? Because anybody who is an ally to America automatically means he's an indirect enemy to Russia. So you see where the issue is coming. So because of these, their hidden interests, it comes to a point whereby they move in and everybody exhibits his power of influence, which once he plays his card well, he can outsmart the other on the ground. Now look at the situation with Cameroon, and let's take the Central African Republic here. You realize that Russia movements, the movements into Central Africa and into Mali, is playing negatively. If you see France calling for an emergency France-African summit with some key holders and holding some summit with youths, which is not as the case, it means that the dance is changing and not working in their favor. So what do? They need to do everything possible diplomatically to make sure they hold some of the territories either passing through youth or passing through other unorthodox means, so that the territory does not slip off their hands as it's already slipping. So you look at it, it's very technical. In the case of Cameroon, as I said, Chubonagi is a diplomat. He's not talking as someone who has direct influence. But if you look at his analysis, he is representing what any other diplomatic community want to weigh. But when they come in now, their interests will be at stake. And so there's a lot of lobbying at the background. That's what people don't know. Cameroon government, it has a lot of lobbying at the background. Okay. The separatist leaders also have a lot of lobbying at the background. They do. That's the reality. And so in this case, you might get to a point whereby he who determines or who gives a higher bidding, for example, in terms of what works well in the mind of another person, you will see him coming in. And that's how mercenaries come into a deal, which we don't call here, but when you see them coming, because somebody presents something juicy to them, if you control an area and they see it fine, give them terms. That's how mercenaries come into Africa and create more havoc. I repeat, more havoc, which at the end of it, they end up forcing those that have helped to power to dance to their tune. If not, they unseat you and bring in another person. So the colonial powers, as we speak, and even mercenaries or whatever, they don't mean good for us. That's why we say that Yaounde's regime action, even though they can no longer solve the crisis because it requires a third party, is an indication that they are teleguided by external forces. And so, will the external forces work for our interests? What happens that United Nations will not act? People are dying. They come to Yaoundé and blow grammar and move. Commonwealth comes in, blow grammar and goes. Francophonie comes in, they blow subtle grammars and leave. And at the same time, we still have people dying and we have the guns smoking. So at the end of it, you realize that they are the ones backing the regime. And the regime tells them that no, we will use force. They say, no, go ahead. But there's now support at the background. Where we have these consequences coming in, we think that in the long run, people who have the pain where they are feeling and the protagonists in the crisis are the ones who determine the twisting of the tongue as the crisis move on.
Okay, we have been joined by Mr. Nji Lucas. Good evening and welcome. And we are reading of how the international community has worked in favor of solving this crisis or in rather igniting it.
Good evening, and good evening to the fellow panelists. It's unfortunate that the traffic in our country today, which is still resulting from mismanagement of our relationship and the nation, has plunged us into a state where roads are no more there and the youth keep buying cars and we are not having roads. And it is only sad that we are committing so much in our military to fight ourselves without producing positive results to build our economy. Now, the international community has never been at a point where you should consider them a good people. If we have to go back to the 1884, if you went back to the Berlin Conference, and if you go back to the treaty in Versailles, and all what they said, Africans are never going to have the kind of weapons they have. As such, if we want to take ourselves out of this place, we should not support the white man's idea of having arms to fight ourselves. I said this some time ago that you do not go on war for adventure. And I want to say that the war in Cameroon to some, it's some kind of an adventure. Now, if Kofi Annan at the time could mediate in the problems which we had with Nigeria to avoid war between these two countries. That was because the war at the beginning was not helping these two countries. Now, come to think of it, that we are at war with our own, and we think that some other persons are going to help us. The statement of Tibor Nagy, to me, is simply the statement which is there to continue with this war. This is a statement that has come to spur the others. When Tibor Nagy visited the Unity Palace, where some said he too received his own package, and when he came out, he had a slip of tongue, wherein the things he said, the separatists applauded him for it, and a few months later or so, he made another outing which was not favorable to the separatists, and we got the castigations which he received on social media. That is to tell you that none of these guys are there to solve this problem. The person who was paying higher could no longer pay higher onto these particular individuals. As such, all they could do is to say the things that would provoke the other person to think that they are coming to help them. Now, the crisis in Cameroon has gone beyond the level of handling it just by ourselves, because there is a lot of bad faith, and the parties involved do not trust themselves, and they think that some other person should come in to serve as a third party. In as much as some people really call for this, and some are already talking about the Swiss talk, and Tibor Nagy is talking about we should continue with the talks in Switzerland. I want to say that these guys are simply business people. If they truly love us, then imperialism will not be in place. Neo-colonialism will not be in place. This is to tell Cameroonians that these people are not for us. And it is high time we sit together, look at each other eyeball to eyeball, and ask honest questions whether the war in which we find ourselves today is helping us in any way, because this war, in my own assessment, is not helping in any way. We keep receiving disturbing images, like the Prime Minister was in the Northwest region, wherein I applaud it a lot, because he went there to preach peace and to encourage ourselves, especially the session which he had with the media houses. But the thing that gets my attention so much away from his outing is what happened, and the day he was rounding off his visit to the Northwest region, where he went for peace as a peace crusader, the situation was not the same. There was the statement he was making in the famous square in Bamenda, and the press conference which he granted in Ayaba was different from what the military was doing in another part of the same region. That is to tell you that some persons are happy when others go to preach the good news, and some persons are not happy because they know what is happening. It is like the story they keep telling us in history, that the white men came to Africa, they had the Bible and the gun. So you realize that every time a white man makes a statement, you think that he is going to help you or help you come out of this situation. Remember that the Bible, the Bible which he has above, beneath that Bible is a gun, and the purpose for that gun is to destroy you. So the moment he gets your attention, he is going to bring in out this gun to tell those who could not have the attention which he had from the beginning that, okay, you must go by it. So in my opinion, the international community has proven to this particular conflict that they have no interest in it. And it is time, us Cameroonians, we should be able to address these things by ourselves. Because if you want to fool yourself, please, Tibor Nagy is not saying this as America. He is saying it as an American. And what we need to know here is that at the time he was in power, he could not influence certain decisions to bring changes in this particular crisis. Then I doubt if Tibor Nagy is going to bring a change into this crisis. We shouldn't forget that this is not the first of its kind within 3 months or so. He made a statement wherein he said when this lady was held there in Douala, he made a statement that it was time for to replace the Yaoundé regime. And we saw how the ruling party came out and had to organize a conference wherein they wrote and said, in as much as America is a friend to Cameroon, but they do not support this outing which some of them will make. That is to tell you that until America's relationship with France gets sour, there is nothing America will do to solve this crisis in Cameroon. It is only sad that they are harboring persons who are causing havoc in Cameroon, and they are playing around with what, and they are changing nothing on the ground. Because if what were to make changes on the ground, La Francophonie came, a Commonwealth came, we have had several envoys to the Unity Palace.
The UN Secretary General was there.
The US Secretary General himself, Thibault Nash himself had been to the Unity Palace, and nothing has changed ever since they left the Unity Palace. Rather, the war is getting into a different state. It keeps on metamorphosing to a state which is not favorable and it's not helpful to Cameroonians. So I think that it is time for us to say no to some of these guys, because the decision which they had in Versailles, it has not changed. The decision they had in Berlin has not changed. Africans will never have the kind of weapons you have in the hands of the white man. And so for the fact that Africa will never have the kind of technology which they have reserved to themselves, it therefore means that no white man is coming into a conflict in Africa to save us. Okay. Yes, we should have that. And I think the youth who are being manipulated, the youth who are being deceived, especially the youth in the diaspora, they think that because the white man has given them the opportunity, they are simply in an economy which is better than their home economy. It doesn't mean that the white man loves them more than their home. Okay. Because the moment they go off track, they will be treated as though they never existed in that same country.
Okay. Mr. Gana, I don't know whether your lines are better now. Can we understand why we think that the international community is very concerned with what is happening out here? But we saw the UN General Assembly just it took place some weeks back, and seemingly Cameroon was not any were very important in their discussions.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. Can you hear me well, right?
Yes, yes.
The issue is not about Cameroon is not important, or the Cameroonian problem is not really important to the UN. First of all, we take emotion out, we need to see the organic arm of the UN. UN is funded by those big multinationals. You need to understand that if those multinational or the biggest country who are among the UN Security Council, they don't have their own interest in the country, it's not a priority. Let us understand it very well. If you see UN spend more than 20 years in Congo DRC, because we know that those multinationals are making profit. To see that the situation of South African Republic, because South African Republic, we know what they have. So you have to understand that at the end of the day, also the country who's colonized by France, anything you want to do, France have to give you an approval. So France was the permanent member of the UN Security Council. If they did not bring the issue of Cameroon, who is going to bring it? This is the question number one. Now, we as Cameroonians, our question is, we have France, have you seen the situation we are going through, that one will never see the problem with UN security? France can explain to us why they have any, they playing any part, or they want to this thing to continue, or they want to have another government that is in trouble. This is the question we, the Cameroonian, need to ask. It's not really the UN Security Council, not the international community, not either African Union. We need to stand by France. Because at the end of the day, you find out if France cannot happen in the UN, I believe that nothing is going to happen. I don't know if you people agree with me. Number one. And number two, maybe our government also has not taken the security that they need from the international community. The country as a nation, because every nation also they have their own right to say that they are handling the situation for now, or the situation for now, and we need to. It's also Cameroon went to the council or Africa to say that we need help, we need to solve this situation. This is the question we need to ask ourselves. And going back on this world is world business. Some of the countries are making money when the countries are not. In fact, do everything they can.
Okay, the lines are really not good. Mr. Samah Abang-Mugwa, he raised an issue there, but an issue that was also being raised by Lucas, a question I was going to ask. The United Nations General Assembly It's not actually discussing this. And I asked Fah Elvis Tayong that these guys have been to Cameroon. They have been received by the President of the Republic, and certainly they had words for him as far as what it would take to solve this crisis is concerned. But those who are also calling these shots, I'm talking about the separatist leaders, they are all in the diaspora, living within the corridors of the international community. What stops them from also calling them and talking with them same way they have come to Yaoundé to talk to the President of the Republic? Are they completely ignorant of the fact that these guys are in their backyard?
Do not be blind to the fact that we have had cases of litigations and prosecutions going on in the U.S. With some isolated cases of separatist leaders who have been prosecuted. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu of IPOP in next door, Nigeria, lived safely in the UK with a British passport, even though by the time he jumped bail in Nigeria and escaped out of the country, he had surrendered his passport to the Nigerian authorities as conditions for his bail. But how did he procure a new passport to get a visa and find himself in the UK? And he was only arrested in Kenya. That should tell you that we're talking of an international community of complicity and an international community of complacency. Those who are complicit and those who are complacent, who may be neutral. And one thing we should bear from my readings in diplomacy and international relations, there is a lot. Diplomacy and international relations is hypocrisy. Okay. It is synonymous to hypocrisy. Dubious, double standard, two-side collapse, as you would say. And that is what makes, that is the ingredient of diplomacy. You say something, but you mean something else. By the time you are meaning something else, you are saying something else. And we seem to focus very much on the international community of the West, forgetful of the African international community. What role have they played? And that is where you see the international community or the international trend of complicity coming in, Leo. Because we are talking about African governments that will do everything possible to protect the interests of, the African presidents who will do everything to protect the interests of their peers. We saw how a 30-year in power president in Uganda was condemning a coup d'etat in Guinea. Meanwhile, he came to power in 1982-83 when he overthrew Milton Obote through a military coup. But he comes out now to condemn another military coup in another country, in another generation. That's all about double standards. And that is why I think the problem that is plaguing our nation can largely only be solved by us. The role of the international community cannot be undermined. That's true. But for us to think that our salvation and our redemption depends on them, and we expect morality and religiosity and godliness from them, and think that they are coming as people from a higher pedestal of morality to help us out of our mess. It is a mess that they smile when they find us in that situation because they reap. I followed what Mr. Gana said from, did you say Uganda or is it Kenya?
Uganda.
He made allusion to the case of the Democratic Republic of Congo. That country has been in war because DRC is the richest resource nation in Africa. And it is not only multinationals that are there. More than 20% of the GDP of Rwanda comes from exploitation by rebel groups loyal to the government of Rwanda in that country. Uganda is there. Even I'm sure that Tanzania. There was a time even Mugabe had sent troops there. So it tells you why a nation can find it. Once you go down that drain and you cannot handle the governance in your country, and you find yourself in the situation where we are, you are at the mercy of that international community of complicity, because you now become the prostitute of everybody. Everybody comes and then takes their own, and they come and they take their own. That is where we are. Unfortunately, the question we should be asking ourselves is, how did we get there, and what can we do? What indigenous solutions can we adopt to remedy to redeem the situation? And unfortunately, that is what those who govern us in this country have failed to do. To like know that the situation, or that the panacea is in their hands. And as long as we continue playing to the gallery, we will continue being victims of the exploitation and complicity of that so-called international community. Which, to me, again, I still ask people, when international humanitarian organizations come in and they pay rents for up to 5 years, that should already tell you that they know that we shall be here for not less than 5 years, renewable, and they form part of that so-called international community. And when they go about giving us fermented rice and some peripheral gifts, we jubilate and we like celebrate them. Those humanitarian organizations are the veiled faces of the mercenaries that Fah talked about, are the veiled faces of the multinationals, are the veiled faces of the lobbyists, are the veiled faces of the governments who would benefit as long as we remain in this situation.
Fah Elvis Tayong, some people think that the international community would only talk when people are killed, when schools are destroyed, and then go back to sleep after that and would never say anything.
Yes, it is the manner in which it is structured.
Are they actually committed to pushing for an end to the crisis?
No, they are not.
Okay.
They are not the least. You know, some of these phony organizations said sometimes that silencing the guns in 2021, and they gave a date there. When you see clowns existing in this world, you know they are clowns. I said the clowns gave a date, and I laughed and laughed. The guns have instead increased. Now, if you ask me under what parameter were they analyzing that silencing the guns this year, this day 2021, I cannot tell. Now, what is happening? Things as they are not active as expected because of their modus operandi. It tells you that most of the times they have an agenda. I have told them, whether they're in Geneva or they're in Addis Ababa, that they are all clowns. They should hear me very well. Now, how do you explain to me, Mr. Leo, that you go to Myanmar, Rohingya Muslims, they were rushing over to the border, almost to India, and they got into a church for shelter. And what you realize is that they were bundled up and roasted. It's still not an issue. I mean, thousands of them were murdered in cold blood. And up till now, even UN forces have not really taken full effect in that country. Do you see witchcraft in broader light? I have said that the nonsense they call UN and African Union are supposed to have been dissolved. All those things they call Commonwealth and whatever they call Francophonie is bullshit. Mr. Leo, ECOWAS is even more, including SADC. These regional organizations have what they call the local standing to bring their member states to order. You will imagine that if not of the over 5,000 marching armies from Senegal into Gambia, Yahya Jammeh would have still rigged election and stayed in power. Because he saw the way they were coming and saw that this was business, he had to escape. And today, Gambia is enjoying some sphere of democracy to an extent. So what does it mean? Any organization that is only waiting to come and be giving food, water, and humanitarian aid when people are suffering has no use on this planet as I speak. That's why I said that our good friends who man, whether it's His Excellency Antonio Guterres and whosoever is for the African Union, Please, this is the time to dissolve all those organizations. And we hook now on our regional organizations. Unfortunately, the Samah, or the one what we call whatever, is another kangaroo one, manned by the colonial powers. But I think that if we have a way of moving over to ECOWAS, because ECOWAS they have in their governing principles, where a member state is carrying out some acts and has been cautioned and is not taking to it, they have the preamble that permits them to step in, using even force. Force is permitted. If you want to be a police, if you want to be a full organization, you must have the police wing of it. And in your organigram, you must state clearly that the moment a member state violates these rules and regulations and gets to this level, we come in with force. Look at how the Gambians they are enduring. And Senegal, who is also playing a vital role in the ECOWAS, is living by example. Because Senegal Senegal knows that no, if I don't live to these examples, then I will also be a disgrace to my own self. That is the only French country in the African continent that has high degree of democracy, Senegal. The rest are playing to the gallery until Mali, now that we can start boasting that Mali is about catching the links and it's coming up. So, Mr. Leo, these organizations, I will tell them, because they are the ones who are harboring all the dictators on the African continent. And as I said, people should understand that we have dirty politics and official politics. I would tell you that if you look at things going and these communities stay quiet, it's because they have a benefit. That's why you see them come to the Unity Palace and go. They come and go. They end with speeches. We have said try and solve the problem in the crisis. I got Antonio Guterres in one of his outings last year, mentioned that he has spoken to President Paul Biya 5 times on the crisis. And so what? If you speak to President Paul Biya 5 times, you fold your arms. It means that President Paul Biya is above you. Because when we're talking about member state for peace and security, crisis is rugging on. 5 years ongoing. You will not wait for 10,000 to 50,000 people to die before you say you're sending a UN peacekeeping force. Of course, we have seen the organizations around, the humanitarian organizations, giving food. Did I tell that we need food? They should go and sit down. Food is not a problem here. You prevent a man from entering disaster than to wait for him to enter a disaster and you start giving him food and he start presenting as if he's a beggar. No. So that's why I said that, Mr. Leo, before God and man, all these, look at the African Union. The president themselves and also man the executive positions are dictators. How do you expect it to work, Mr. Leo? How do you expect African Union to work when those who are supposed to man order there are dictators and they go behind supporting and covering people who have ruled for decades with people suffering? Why are we not going to have people dying in the seas in Mexico and the mountains? Because these ruthless leaders, demonic as per se, have made life unbearable for their various subjects in the various countries on the African continent. So at the end of it, a man will get the one day and tell you that no, I am going to America by foot. Another one tells you I'm going to Italy by foot. If we tell the dozens of Africans who have been held captives in the desert in Libya, you will lament. Those who are tortured, women who are used as sex slaves, go to Dubai, go to Kuwait. Many Africans there are tortured. Some are killed in cold blood by what we call the sadists and some racist Arabs. Were they supposed to be there? No. Because these hoodlums in the name of our leaders have taken the various continents hostage, and well, look at what is happening. Their citizens can no longer enjoy their homeland. The end thing is that they want to go and watch corpses in Dubai, in Kuwait, in Greece, and all the like, and they are treated in total, in an inhuman condition. And at the end of it, what do you see the organization doing? They stay quiet. We have seen videos of women manhandled in the Middle East. And sometimes Cameroonians were manhandled. And I had friends who asked me, what is the Cameroon's embassy and the consulate in Dubai doing? Now we have issues of human rights abuses in the Middle East. You see African countries, they have their consular services there, and they stay mute.
Okay.
It is a call for concern.
Good evening, Mr. Liu and the panelists. The so-called international community isn't helping things here, especially France is France is flaming the crisis because of interest. The government too is having bad faith to her own people. From Nanji Mark, writing from Big Ngbanzi. Good evening, Mr. Kum, and to our highly knowledgeable panelists. I just wish to buttress the point which Mr. Samah raised to the effect that the international community unfortunately intervenes only when their interests are at stake And thus, it is logical to affirm that the international community is rather helping to worsen the Anglophone crisis, especially as most of our youth took up guns with the impression that the so-called international community will soon step in to their favor. Our youth and various communities and factions trapped in this war must understand that we are in a capitalist system. Lessons from the unfruitful presence of the UN, France, the USA, Russia, China, especially the DRC, Central African Republic, Mali, etc., should make communities of the Northwest and Southwest to do everything possible to chase out any armed groups in the various communities to equally protect the interests of their communities. Africans must stop killing each other with hopes that some foreign body will come up to their aid. Africans must learn to confront each other without imperialist guns and weapons and disagree to agree rather than to rely on the international community. If the Yaoundé government is not ready to take the first move to let go Northwest and Southwest communities to take the lead to save their communities, God rather helps those who truly surrender to Him. Mba Ndong Ano Ebi, writing from Boya. Good evening to you. Greetings to you, Mr. Liu and crew. Please, the international community can only come in when people involved in the crisis are ready for dialogue. Cameroon government is not ready to end the crisis. Marcos is writing from Limbe. Good evening, Mr. Liu and all in the studio. Courage to you all. Elvis Brown is watching from Shell, New Bell, that is out here in Douala. Good evening, Mr. Liu. It's so funny in the sense that Cameroonians are educated but don't really reason. The Europeans have never wished Africans good, so why calling for them? Kiki Lamu is writing from Chang. This one says, the international community is not working for our good. They supply the guns we use to kill ourselves. The separatists are still to understand this. Isidore Su is writing from Bamenda. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Thumbs up to Mr. Nj. Lucas and co. They are filled with wisdom. T. Ferino is writing from Kumba. Good evening, panelists. I'm Alfred from Limbe. Humble opinion is that the Cameroon government have divided Cameroon since. So Thibaut Nagy is just reminding on what has been done. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Okay. We are looking at the international community, the United Nations, but did you expect the UN General Assembly to at least focus on what is happening? Because severally we've seen the European Union say they want the rights of people in Cameroon to be respected, both sides to end the crisis. We've seen the US houses, both houses, they have echoed something about this, and other diplomats have done the same. Many persons thought that this was an opportunity for UN General Assembly to say something. If they are not saying it now, are they going to be saying it soonest?
I want to get the televiewers and let them have this, and I think it will be great that they take this down. The decisions for issues to be brought into the General Assembly entails a lot or high degree of lobbying. It is not done on the basis of the situation on the ground. We have the case of Bashar al-Assad in Syria, who have murdered thousands of people, close to millions. You have the case of Khalifa Haftar in Libya, and you have what they call in Libya the UN-backed government. And the Khalifa Haftar movement in Libya is being supported by other parties. There are so many cases, but I want to dwell on this. The UN General Assembly brings in whatsoever on the basis of lobby. Once you have lobby to the point that the people who are in charge will submit this into the House, then you are going to have it. They will not tell you, but this is what happens. Now, for the UN to set into your matter when you have a problem, the Security Council does not come on its own. And for the fact that no African country, I repeat, no African country is a member in the UN Security Agency or Council, this alone tells us that there is no way they are thinking well about us. And for Africans who are still hoping and dreaming that the UN is going to come to our aid someday, one of the separatist leader, I think, had said the UN does not give give independence. I think somebody of the person, Mark Barata, has said this when Tibor Nagy said the UN is not ready to create, or America is not in support to create micro-states. When he made that statement, they came out and they lamented on the guy, and they said all kind of nasty things, and said the UN itself does not give independence. Now, this is to tell those of you who are thinking that the UN is going to grant independence. But this may also give the government of Cameroon the mind that, or this may be giving them the mind that what they are doing is right. I have said the only thing you don't go on adventure for is war. And because this is not something for you to venture into it, it is time for the Cameroon government to look at each other eyeball to eyeball and call off this war. I said it some time ago that to solve this problem, it is very simple. Our historians, our political historians, the anthropologists, the sociologists, if they go to work properly to look at what is happening in this country, we are going to have a quick result. I said, if you go back to look at 1961, between 1961 and 1966, what happened is why we are where we are today. If you leave 1966 to jump up to 1972, it went further to mutate where we are today. And if you leave that particular era and come back to come up to 1982, right down to 1986, then you will know why we are where we are today. And so these persons I have listed, if we have these persons of good faith in this country, whether the separatists want to separate this country or not, I tell you the truth, we are going to have it better. And these are the same people who go about saying that federation is synonymous to separation. And that is the reason why you have the government still contemplating whether they should take the step of the federalists. But I want to say that the problem in Cameroon has no solution in the hands of the white man. I could keep on listing the number of countries. When Crimea was being annexed by Russia, even with the powers NATO had, NATO could not actually push off Russia from Crimea. On the contrary, Lucas Lushenko, I think the president of the time in Greece, what he did was, of Ukraine, pardon, what he did was, he had to instant meet Putin in the Kremlin, in the capital of Russia, in order to discuss and to see how they can manage that particular area. America decided to pull out from Afghanistan, and her allies came out and said she acted in bad faith, which even caused France to withdraw her ambassador. France had to recall her ambassador from the United States when America decided to step in and make sales to weapons that will help Australia. And it caused France to recall her ambassador. That is to tell you that these guys, they know where to act. If it were an African country, you will see it. When Nicolas Sarkozy and the others, they decided to come to Libya to destroy Libya, you heard what Barack Obama said when he was voted out, when his tenure elapsed. You heard what he said. He said he regrets the war. Hillary Clinton equally regrets the war. Bill Clinton has said it was a mistake to ever that they took the decision to go to Iraq. I want Cameroonians to know that if we think that the white man has a solution to the ongoing crisis in Cameroon, or to the ongoing senseless war, like I keep calling it in Cameroon, I want Cameroonians to know that the white man has no solution to this crisis. Like my brother here said, Mr. Samah, that it is only us, that a good number of Cameroonians are capable of solving these problems. Let those who think that the Swiss talk is going to bring solution to the Anglophone crisis know that it is still the game. The reason why they have not actually pressed hard for this Swiss talk to continue or to be the way they think it started, it's because the lobbying teams do not more have the resources to push forward. And once you don't have the resources to press hard on it, I tell you the truth, nothing is going to be done. But this does not mean that the Yaoundé government, I beg them in God's name, it doesn't mean that we should take this and leverage on the people and keep on allowing people to die because we think that the people's hands are tied. But I want them to know that if we do not put things in order, we will keep on this will continue even for the next 20 years. And sadly, nobody is going to live forever.
Good evening to you all in the studio. I support Mr. Fah with the idea of dissolving these international organizations, the UN, etc. How can the head of state declare in France that he wanted to assimilate the Anglophones because of their minority? And there is nothing this international community can do. They are rather toothless bulldogs. This is Eric Teacher writing from Bamenda. Good evening to you, Eric. Suremi says, good evening. Fah is a novice in diplomacy, but backside talks. Cameroon is a sovereign state who intervened in America when blacks were under Jim Crow's laws. The UN plays the mediator and not the police. Okay. Good evening in the House of Commons. It is clear that we are the only ones to settle our problems. No stranger knows us than we know ourselves. That notion of international community should get lost in our mindset. Texting, I'm writing from Bafusam. Good evening to you all in the studio. Cameroon government has to understand that everything has its place and every place has its thing. Okay, don't know what you mean by that. Speaking parables, okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu and panelists, and a special one to Mr. Fah, the kangaroo man. More grace to your elbow. CDC strike action for tomorrow has been called off, and PM to meet with the trade union leaders. Takang is writing from Limbe, okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu. To say the UN does not give independence is very wrong. Who gave independence to all the countries under the mandate, then trusteeship system? Tabe is writing from Yaoundé. This is Fabian from Moyuka. Let Thibaut Nagy go and look for a place and sit down. He is just making noise as usual. Same goes to the people that call them self-diploma. UN are all the same. They sit and have never helped Africa in any war, but only come to give us food so that we should keep on fighting. Sitting on the table is the only way. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu and Co. What a great program. Looking at what is happening in Nigeria, Ethiopia, South Africa, etc. Federation is the worst system of government. It can't work in Africa. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Extend my greetings to Mr. Fah Elvis. We use water to lose, but fire, okay? Not smoke. It's me, Francis, writing from Bamenda. Good evening, Mr. Liu and panelists. The international community can only come in when their interest is being threatened. We have the means to end the crisis. Cameroonians, rather than calling on the international community, a sincere and genuine dialogue with all the parties involved without any preconditions will end the crisis. I'm writing from China. Yes, but Mr. Samah, majority of the people actually see the international community as a toothless bulldog, and many people think that they only come in when their interest is available. But why don't we see a mobilization from the key stakeholders for a Cameroonian solution? We have independent-minded persons in Cameroon. Why are we not seeing either NGO, civil society organization mobilizing to push such persons to take a frontline position to solving this problem?
It's unfortunate that we can't see that, and we haven't seen that, and the possibility of us seeing that in the nearest future is also bleak.
Very slim, eh?
Yeah, very slim, very bleak, I said. And because it's really not just a political issue, but it's an existential issue, and one that does not have to do with regime change, but has to do with the territorial integrity of the state. And in as much as you find political voices like the CRM strongly condemning the war in the Northwest and the Southwest and calling for an end to the war, it's it is very tricky, and it's a political hot potato, the way they handle it, so that they should not be identified to be siding with those who are for outright separation. So it's a very tricky issue, which has to do with the foundations of the nation and the state. Now, we are talking about two extreme voices, two extreme narratives. The narrative that Cameroon is one and indivisible, and whoever thinks that Cameroon should be divided is preaching the extinction of Cameroon. And you find at the other extreme those who think that the only way out for them to guarantee their existential survival, their existence as human beings, is separation. So it becomes very tricky. And in addition to that, I think I have never really been a lover of the regime that that is in control in this country. I've never really admired our government as a political institution or as a political movement. They have never really shown good faith, and I think that we are still at the stage where we are, and sliding down the drain, sliding down the slope further because of bad faith on the part of those who govern us. I think if the right things had been done at the right time, we would not have gotten anywhere near where we are today. And it's unfortunate that 5 years down the line, nothing near to the right thing has been done. I distance myself very strongly from those who say government has done a lot or it has done enough. It has not done enough of the right things. It has not done a lot of the right things. It has spent its time doing a lot and enough of the wrong things. Mm-hmm. And that is why, again, Leo, I may not be talking for anybody, but I think that even amongst Anglophones who hate the Ambazonian approach, amongst 1,000 Anglophones who hate the Ambazonian option, and are really not people who don't really think that this country should better divide. It's just a feeling of we don't like Amber Boys, but not that we don't dream of a better life for our children. So okay. It's something we expect the government to do a lot of the right, or just do a little of the right things that are supposed to be done, okay, rather than wasting time doing a lot of the inconsequential things. Okay,
Mr. Gana, you followed the reactions of most of our panelists who themselves don't believe so much on the international community. Okay, it's off. Fah Elvis Tayong, you've seen the reaction of many persons. But why can't we get the Fah Elvis Tayongs, the Apostle Lambes, the Tumfo Barrister Nico Halles, and mobilize the George Ngwanes and the like to see how they can also, the people should rely on them rather than relying on the international community?
Well, that question is very pertinent, Mr. Leo. They can never dream of taking us, because those that are supposed to pick up objective persons as per se are the ones who want us to be where we are. You know the regime here very well. They are the ones who want us to be where we are. How do you explain? For example, I went to the Prime Minister's visit in Bamenda. I constitute one of those who were from Momo Division. And what was it? I wanted to see things for myself because I knew it was a failed mission of the First Order. But the Prime Minister as a person did all he could. But the system that sent him is a kangaroo one that prevented him from producing results. Now, look at it, Mr. Leo, that we are in a place. I was the only one from the opposing camp. The rest is CPDM inclined. Look at the caliber of person who left Yaoundé. Because this is where the issue, that's why I said, from what I'm analyzing, Mr. Leo, nobody will call Apostle Lambe, nobody will call Mr. Samah, Nobody will call my brother here who is giving analysis excellently. Nobody will call us, because in the minds of those that reason in Yaoundé, they are the only ones who can do and undo for things to be where they are. So, because they are embedded with dishonesty of the first order, you cannot tell me that people, 90% of those who were stakeholders, they came from out of Bamenda town. Bamenda town itself. I mean, the Northwest region, because most of them, if I tell you how they were disappearing one after the other, that things I will not even be able to say here. Because they came in with what is like something was cooked somewhere along the line and bundled to present as if we want to bring an end to it. Now, how do you explain, Mr. Leo, that crisis started? The same persons who have been at the forefront of proposals for the crisis to end are the same persons to today. Do you call that a conscious government? It is a kangaroo one. Because you don't do the same things and you expect different results. The same parliamentarians, the same elites who feed fat in Yaoundé, the same ones who have escaped from their homes and their areas and taken refuge in Yaoundé, Douala, and other towns, are the same ones who come to speak on behalf of the divisions. What do you expect? I pity, because while we are blaming, if you see, Mr. Leo have said, if you have a wife at home and you keep beating that wife all the time, sometimes the wives pretend that it's an internal affair and they will not want to expose you. So you see, when the wife gets up in the morning, the face is swollen and they ask what happened. He said, no, I fell, I hit it when I was sleeping. Or when there were no lights, I wanted to put a light, I hit my face. No. Because that wife still loves you and thinks that issue should be solved amicably. But they get to a point in time where the wife will open the door, running into your own neighbor's house, crying that it don't bad. Now what do you expect? Because at that point in time, the wives want that neighbor whom she had been deceiving, that no, there's no problem, to know that he has to come in to assist her, if not she will die. This is the situation between the English speaking and the French speaking. And the worst of it is that Yaoundé regime, just like the colonial system.
Is it a problem between the English speaking and the French
No, I'm talking about the system.
Yeah, but
I'm talking about the system.
Are there not Anglophones in the system?
Mr. I'm coming. I've not that. That is why this is the issue between the English speaking part of the country and the French speaking part of the country. And that explains why, when you find a scenario,
is it a problem between French speaking and English
system of the country, not French speaking? Mr. You are not getting me. There's a problem between the French speaking part of the country and the English speaking part of the country, which boils down to system of governance. And the issue here is that, look at it, that the regime chooses to use, but the same persons who don't have what it takes to place honesty on the table. Mr. That's where I'm coming now. Because if the regime was changing faces, all right, we used parliamentarians as senators last time, it did not work. What do? We get to the people in the civil society. Let's get those who call the shots and try their own side of the story. If it does not work, let's go to the governors like some of us, because it's possible. Mr. Samah, who is here, an intellectual, if you put him there, I don't think he will not be able to produce the result. So at the end of it, the regime having in mind that there are some persons who call the shots, who are the same creators of the problems, who move with insultive words that cannot calm down the situation. I'm sorry to tell you that, Mr. Leo.
Okay.
It is a call for concern. So it answers your question that Tayong, Fah Elvis, Mr. Samah, my brother here, all of us who are Apostle Ambe, we don't have any say, because Yaoundé has an agenda. The people they think understands the mafia in the politics are the only ones whom they can brandish as elites in the various areas. Okay. Elites who cannot speak the truth. Okay. Elites who come and tell lies and disappear overnight back to Yaoundé and Douala. Good
evening, Mr. Leo and all the panelists. I'm so much impressed with the great minds in the studio today. How I wish the voices could really mean anything to our Cameroon government. We keep hoping on the whites while the long-awaited whites are there, busily providing us with guns to kill ourselves. I trust God for his wrath will not spare anyone who hurts his own. Let those in control be aware. I'm Roland, writing from Fundong Boyo subdivision, enjoying the program. Thanks. Okay. Good evening to you and everyone watching us from Fundong, Belu, Njinikam, and other. Good evening, sir. I would suggest the former ambassador to Africa, Mr. Thibault Nagy, should sit quiet, because he did nothing when he was in power, and it's not about ranting now that will change anything. The solution to this crisis lies here in Cameroon, precisely in Yaoundé. Release all arrested in connection to this crisis and let them get to sincere negotiations without preconditions. I think with good faith, we will have the solution to the crisis. Aze is writing from Douala. Good evening, Mr. Leo. I'm Tabi Charlie Tabot. Your programs are always interesting, especially on the Anglophone crisis. Good evening to you too. Good evening, Mr. Liu and my fellow comrades. I think calling on international body is not necessary. I think they don't want this war to stop because they have all it takes to stop it. This war, but they keep giving deaf ears for their selfish interests. Why should we be looking for help, our solution elsewhere, when we have the solution to this war in our hands? Cardinal writing from Yaoundé. Okay, good evening to you, Cardinal. Daisy writing from Kumba says, good evening, Mr. Liu, and to all the panelists. It's really a hot evening. Prince Ndikum writing from Sweden says, you guys close the group so that we can't comment on the program. Okay. This one, Mabison writing from Kumba says the debate is hot. Good evening to you, Mabison. We are going to take a short break. When we come back, we discuss our second topic for this evening. Without any break, please. Okay, for the last 30 minutes, we're going to be looking at the Fako land grabbing saga that has been on for decades. Today, we're asking the question as to whether the lone concerned elite in Fako remains Professor Limunga Njeuma. You live in Boya, Samah. I don't know. Many persons actually wrote to me. Reason why I'm discussing this. She came up with what they call the brief notes on land grabbing in Fako by Professor Dorothy Limunga Njeuma. It says, one, she says, irregular allocations of land at Bostal Junction and Federal Quarters in August and September 2019, following PM's visit of May 2019. Okay, it goes further to say irregular surrender of CDC lands in 2020, surrender cancelled, but some persons continue to sell and exploit the lands in question. Attempts to grab UB land in 2020 as follow-up to threats by some greedy Fako chiefs in 2016. Okay, irregular allocations of land in and around Likoko and Upper Farms in Boya in 2021, inherent security risk. Severally, she has come out publicly. She has written to the presidency and many other high quarters in Yaoundé. Why is she the only person talking on behalf of the people of Fako?
I do not think she's the only person talking, but I think she's the only person with a very authoritative voice, given the person that she incarnates, given the person that she is. It's unfortunate that there are others with higher pitches, with louder voices, but who have decided to go silent. It's unfortunate that for an issue as sensitive as this, most of the others have gone dumb and deaf, or they are dumb though they are not deaf. I take you back to 2000, to the year 1999 and 2000, when Mbamba Dorothy was still the Vice Chancellor of UB. It was under her reign that the perimeter wall fence was constructed at UB entrance on both sides of the road. creating that that corridor, because she had seen how neighbors were encroaching on both sides. So she let go certain portions of the land and concentrated on that interest, because she had foreseen that people were already encroaching right onto the university street. So it is not just a matter of CDC, but it's a matter of that cuts across Fako. And the question I always ask, but why is it so much intense in Fako division? One thing we should know, I did a bit of economics and the factors of production. I'm sure land is at the top. Land. Because the value of land is a factor of economic production whose value always evaluates. The value of land would hardly, unless in cases of environmental pollution and degradation, the value of land would never depreciate. And that is the language, and that's the secret that, permit me use these two examples, the Bamileke people and the Igbo people have understood. And the Catholic Church, wherever they find land, they do not minimize the value of that land, even in the next 20 years, even the next century. And what is happening in Fako is not only limited to Fako, but the issue is that of Fako is so outstanding. Maybe because the indigenes of Fako division have allowed themselves to be prostituted upon, and they give away such a commodity. Leo, there are areas in this country where it is difficult for you as a non-native, a non-indigene, to have full ownership rights over land. That of Fako, maybe because of the legendary hospitality of the Fako man, which is being abused now. My worry with that document is the complicity of the indigenes. Baba Dorothy has indicated there, and I am happy that she called names and cited the name of the governor. How the governor threatened to destitute a recalcitrant chief who will not dance to his tune because of land. We are talking about the case of the late former SDO of Fako, a certain Zantra, who had hectares of land in Fako division. And when there was seemingly a threat, he sold them off before dying. Now we're talking about cases where people have decided to like run down and destroy even the second highest employer of the Republic, CDC. But CDC land is up for grabs. I watch, I'm not sure whether I was on your TV station, how a group of villagers representing 8 or 10 villages of Tiko and Boya subdivision marched to the governor's office.
We did a program on that. That
governor that Madam Limunga does not trust marched to the governor's office asking for the retrocession of CDC lands to them. And she just cited that case. That was just some planned act of hungry people who want land.
Okay.
We are talking about the case of a story that Atia Tilarus covered in 2017. The issue, it was in the Sun newspaper. How some 17 chiefs or 16 chiefs wrote a letter to the head of state, telling the head of state that we collected money to oil the land retrocession process, to oil, to corrupt, to bribe people and get land. And the deal went, sir, and we are calling on the head of state now to ask the university to surrender land to us so that we can buy our heads, because we are CPD militants. You can imagine the level of impunity in this country.
Okay.
So the issue, Leo, you will permit me just end, is I think because the Fako man, out of legendary hospitality, has allowed themselves to be hijacked.
Yeah, but
and in complicity with administrators.
Yes, but if that's the case, what stops the elites now, who are learned, who understand better, to defend the people and the land?
the traditional elite, the chiefs, are part of the mafia.
Okay.
I am sure you have read in her jottings where she said that chiefdoms have been created because of land.
Okay, I have the document here. I have a soft copy of the document. For those who want, I will share with you. It is the title is Brief Notes on Land Grabbing in Fako by Professor Dorothy Limunga. Njeuma, I read some already. The 6 point, she says irregular allocations of land in and around Likoko and upper farms in Boya in 2021, inherent security risk. Okay. 7, creation of fake new layouts, Wonjia new layout in Fuel plantation above Parliamentarian flats in Boya. 8, she says Konak investigation on irregular occupation of state lands in Boya, February 2021. 9, she says allocation of 25 hectares of CDC land near Miselele to DDR in 2021, area fenced for DDR, less than 5 hectares. The rest has been given sold to administration, chiefs, and others. Professor Limunga Njeuma goes further to say instruction by the Director of Civil Cabinet at the Presidency to MINCAF to surrender CDC land 1st June 2021 in contradiction to instructions of the Secretary General at the Presidency cited above. 11, she says irregular creation of chiefdoms and designation of fake chiefs in Fako 2021-2020, all with aim of grabbing more lands. 12 points, she says attempt by governor in 2021 to destitute Chief Augustine Kombe Elongo of Mwangai village, president of Fako Chiefs Conference for refusal to play his game in contradiction to his regional order of 2016 to confirm him as chief of Mwangai village. And the last, she says, recent march by the chiefs of some villages in Tiko and Boya to governor of the Southwest region, supported by some of their subjects and greedy non-natives, to agitate for land surrender by CDC, September 2021. Okay, response by GM of CDC by press release of 15 September 2021. Very disturbing situation, and she is the person who wrote during the UB land issue. Yes. She wrote, and now she's still coming out. We have senators in Fako, we have parliamentarians in Fako, we have other political, traditional, and administrative elites from Fako.
That is what beats our imagination here. That one man is standing tall in the desert, or in the forest rather, and is fighting a fight while others from the same family, when I say family means the same ruling class, the same regime-oriented area, and they stay aloof. Many things are wrong. I remember sometime when one of the female commissioner in Boya, a lady 5 stars or 6, I think so, who had to escape her work back to Yaoundé because of the threat she got from the administrative authorities. I know of lands in the southwest, excluding to parts of Ombe, that are owned by administrative authorities. Now, the question is simple. Why will Professor Dr. Dorothy Limunga Njeuma be crying foul alone? Why? That is the question. When I tell you that administrators use elites and their people to create a scenario of money-making machinery, at the same time a divide and rule syndrome, that is it operating. Of recent, I think about 2 weeks ago, we had an article that was created somewhere down around after my 15, somewhere like that, and they are created after every 2 months or 3 months. The agenda is simple. I can put it to this area that is still about to begin. You imagined the mafia on the issue of Tiko Douala village. CDC robber was failed, down completely. I mean, you are creating a village with not a single soul really living there. And they said that was a village. And after crying foul up and down, the thing made Steve resistant and all the like, The land is lying there. But the robbers have been destroyed already. So you begin to see when we say that most of the products from Enam have been structured in a kangaroo manner to give us a different scenario, and instead of serving us, instead going the other way around, with some exceptions of the Enam boys, because not all, because you can go through a foreign school, but you refuse to be baptized by that foreign school. That is the situation we're talking about here. So we have few of them. I don't want to call names because it will be partial I'm doing here, but majority of the Enam boys working in collaboration with the chiefs, it is a sacrilege. I know that with Ampasa Motor watching. I know that with the ancestors of the foot of man Fako watching. A boomerang is coming anytime from now. For especially the elites and the Fako chiefs involved in these shady and dirty deals. Look at the Livara village saga. Look at the Bonadi Combo saga after the park. That project has been halted. Because I'm saying the officials did their mafia through the chiefs. And the chiefs that were selling land on behalf of the administrative officials. You can imagine this. And that's how the palm plantations were felt down in my fort. They know what I'm talking about. They know, they're listening to me. But I know that with the ancestors that live it on the foot of Man Fako and in Fako, a time will come when the spirit will haunt these chiefs and their descendants to the latter for this kind of connivance with people who are just coming as administrators in your homeland. Look at it the way Professor Njeuma is crying foul. Because she does not cry this far and we're not taking it serious. It will come a time where in your village you are renting. How do you explain that? That in my village I am renting. And if we don't put this under control, it will get to a point whereby even the chiefs will be renting in their own village. That means a palace is under rent. That would be a sacrilege. So we think that why we're giving these utterances, it is because people have decided to sell their conscience to the devil because of money. Just like what Judas did with 30 pieces of silver. That is the scenario. And I'm surprised that with all of this, senators acquired, parliamentarians acquired, mayors acquired, who are all sons and daughters of the soil in Fako. This is witchcraft in broad daylight. But as I said, as a custodian of tradition, that I am, spokesman and mouthpiece of the fawn, I know tradition is one. I will stand behind Professor Dr. Limunga Njeuma till the kingdom come. The lands you are taking is for your risk, at your own risk. Because even those that were bought by the former SDO are currently being contested now. Okay. Some land titles have been withdrawn from the state because they have issues.
Evening to you in the studio. Another new layout has just been given to someone. Villages around Wotutu going towards Mapanja village. Mr. Liu, you need to see how people's crops have been destroyed by this landmonger called Chief, just in a haste to sell and make money for their own personal interest. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu and the panelists. May God Almighty bless you and all our brothers who take their time to educate Cameroonians on the ongoing crisis. We have prayed and we will keep praying for God's intervention, more wisdom and knowledge to all the panelists. Robinson writing from Bambalang. Good evening to you. Robinson Chinda from Bafusam says, good evening, Mr. Liu. This program is very nice. The regime in Yaoundé is not ready to end the crisis, okay? Greetings to you all in the studio. Mendy Humphrey writing from Limbe. I just want to say to you all that when you don't ask the right questions, you don't get the right answer. How will the government change the minds of Anglophones in order for this country to unite again? Good evening, Mr. Liu. Please tell, okay. Yes, I'll tell him. Greetings to you people, Mr. Liu, and special greetings to Mr. Elvis. Only us Cameroonians can solve our problems. We should stop killing each other. Itwe Henry writing from Kumba. Good evening, Davidson writing from Muyuka. Please, Tibo Nagi is simply saying the truth. You have been refusing to read out my contributions. So needless writing. Good night. The messages are so many now. Good evening to my media prime. Imagine that the defense minister, okay. Now, what's happening with Fako? Do you think there is need for the elites to come together, also talk with the chiefs, traditional authorities to see how to save what is remaining?
I want to drift a little with the issue of land in Fako. I want to get it from the point where the chiefs are considered as auxiliaries, and because they are considered as auxiliaries
of the administration,
this is the reason why they have mortgaged their sovereignty to these administrators, and they are using it now against them to blackmail them that if you do not do this, then it means you will be kicked off. But I am glad that a certain chief refused and did not yield to the pressure which came from the governor. The issue of land in Fako is something which I see it as a problem, not really from the Fako people. I want to say that the government has the ability. We are saying that the government is in charge of all the lands. And if we were to go by the law on the ground to evaluate and to get these administrative officers or the administrators in the respective areas and get them accountable on what they have, then you will realize that in the process of acquiring this land, there is no legal document bringing in the name of the administrative or the administrator in that particular area. Mr. Leo, when you apply for land, like the case where people are going back to reclaim their land from CDC, you submit alongside the names of persons you consider to be indigenous of that particular area. So my question now is, when this document is submitted to the high office, the names of these administrators, is it there or not? If these names are there, does it not ring a bell in their head that these are the same persons who ought not to be among those who are requesting for their land? That is a very big question. When you apply for land, like the new layout just given, the name of the indigenes of that area is there. You bring in their names. And if these administrators are receiving these lands and selling them, it therefore means that illegal dealings have taken place behind with some of these chiefs. Now, the big question is, why are the elites of this area so quiet when this land issue is concerned? I want to believe that it is because they have surrendered their sovereignty, their reasoning ability to greed. And since they have decided to take up certain positions over their people, because they now leverage on their people to secure their positions. And this is the reason why most of the administrators will not speak. The governors and the DOs have embarked on taking the people's land. There is a land Njeuma mentioned around the parliamentarian flat and in Bow Plantation. If you go to look at that area, we are talking about close to 24 to 70 something hectares of land with claims that it belongs to a particular person. Now I start asking question, is this man the chief of that area? If you could have over 71 hectares of land or so, are you the chief of that area? But this land was taken and sold to that individual. And even the area where we have the government school around the central market in Boya, that particular land, the school is almost to close because some persons have taken it upon themselves to put their fence just on the wall of that school. Ma, in her first document, and like she said on a certain episode on Cameroon Calling, she also decried that particular area alongside the same area she is mentioning today, the Bosta area, and she had mentioned it also alongside the UB area. But I want to say that the administrative officers around these areas, their mission to Fako, I think it is to crumble the institutions and to give the land to a certain group of people. It will not be good to mention certain things here, but I want to say that if you go to look at most of these lands, even the indigenes are restrained from buying the lands. They sell the lands to non-indigenes, and they sell the lands to people whom they know has it financially more than the people of that particular area. And in most cases, you find the same people, especially the youths, when they come out to protest against their land, you find them behind bars. So I think that the solution to this land issue, like my rights, lies in Yaoundé. And if the government in Yaoundé does not want to look into this issue, I think this is another issue that is going to cause problem in Fako, because if you look at the awareness of the youths of Fako today, it's not like before. They are aware that they have been so kind to the strangers, as they put it, and they are now tenants in their own house, not because they wanted to be tenants. Some of them are forced to be tenants. The list, especially the list of new layout, you will barely have names of indigents. So I think that it is time for the government to look at this issue critically and handle it as matter of urgency, because if care is not taken, like I said, we may find the youth of Fako giving into what we know other youths have given into, and it's not helping us.
The brief note tabled to the PM by Professor Limunga and Njeuma is a realistic summary of the conspiracies surrounding ceding of lands in Fako. Parliamentarians in Fako should hide their faces in shame for not speaking up. Melanie is writing from Limbe. Good evening to you. The maker writing from Boya says they usually write invincible names and positions assigned for playing grounds. Cemetery, schools are sold. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Kum. Please greet the kangaroo man. He is a good analyst. I tell him to continue with the good work he's doing. God will reward him. The Edwin is writing from Sanchu. Good evening, Mr. Liu and the panelists. Prof. Dorothy Limunga Njeuma has written well about the Fako land grabbing saga. She's one of the persons with the highest solutions to solve the Anglophone crisis too. I wish she can do same to Anglophone crisis. Vali is writing from Limbe. Good evening to you, Vali. Yes, we are almost out of time. We have just three minutes.
I think the the land grabbing issue in Fako is in the limelight because it is the turn of Fako. But it is, I'm not surprised that this is a practice that has taken place in other parts of this country for long.
Okay.
It's unfortunate that the main legal instrument that regulates our land use and land tenancy rights in Cameroon dates back as far as 45 years ago, because it's the 1974 ordinance, which unfortunately has not been sufficiently revised. It is it is true that the state is the custodian of all lands. All lands belong to the state, even those over which individuals have land titles. The state can reclaim them under legal procedures. But again, one thing I am very much concerned about is when the state discovers that there is need because of economic expansions, because of population and demographic explosions, the state can retrocede lands to communities where it is necessary, so that people can construct, people can like own private lands. But the problem with the situation in Fako is, again, as I heard the viewer Melanie there, right, it's the shady nature with which they are done. I was privy to a document written by the Prime Minister cancelling lands that had almost been retroceded to over 21 phony and fictitious NGOs. Association for the Fight Against Hunger, 21 hectares, orphanage for the poor, 32 hectares. I mean, about 21 of such things. And all of that had to do with lands from Mutengene right down to Edinau, CDC lands. Thank God that all of that was nipped in the bud. But I want you to understand that it is not the fact that the state gives back land to people, it is the shady nature with which those lands are given and the way they are used, and the individuals, the real faces behind the veils, who are behind all of that. Okay. I'm sure that is why there is so much outcry. But I think that Madam Njeuma is like doing what other Fako elites believe in. But you know, when you are at a certain age and you know that you have nothing to lose again or to gain from a regime, that's when you can talk on behalf of those who still have much in stake. What she speaks is she's not only speaking her mind. I want to very much believe that she speaks the mind of even the younger parliamentarians and senators who may not want to jeopardize certain things for now. And so, Madam, who has nothing to gain or lose from the system, allows things that she can sacrifice herself.
Well, for those of you watching who would want to have the brief notes of on land grabbing in Fako by Professor Dorothy Limunga and Njeuma, you can just indicate to me on WhatsApp. I will send you the documents. We've come to the end of today's edition of Prime. Mr. Fah Elvis Tayong, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks very much, and greetings to Rwanda, who's watching us out there at Ikunu in Yaoundé, and the host of others, Daisy in Kumba, and we think of the mayors of Mayor of Kumba, one Mayor Samah, and the host of others who are watching us right now. So I think anytime we'll come back again to give our modest contribution, but we think that the land of the people must be preserved. And the worst of it is that when the state or some state agents use these chiefs who are supposed to be custodians to become middlemen and businessmen on the land of the people, they will definitely answer, if not physically, then spiritually, on the part from the ancestors in Fako.
Okay. Also, thank you to you, Mr. Anji.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leo. I just want to say that the international community is not going to solve our problem, and it is time for the government of Cameroon and the Cameroonian people to sit on the same table and see how we can resolve this crisis. And I also want to appreciate those who have given their time and those who have been giving their time in Habit to support the IDPs and the IDP retainees in the center whom we are training. I want to appreciate so much the volunteers and the staffs of Habit. I think they are doing a great job. And I want to also say that please let the government come in quickly, because I love to serve humanity, but I think because of the ongoing crisis, the people we have at the center is the effect of the crisis. So I think it will be great if we get to solve this crisis so that they too can go back to the life which they once had. Thank you.
Okay, we want to thank you too for coming all the way from Boya.
I want to particularly thank Amber warriors in the Northwest and the Southwest who have allowed schools to go some form of community schooling. I am happy that they listened to the cry we made here in August after GC results came out. I am happy that they are now listening to the voice of reason, and they have seen the need for some form of education and schooling to go on in the communities. I thank all of those community leaders who are adding their efforts so that schools can resume. I call on my people in Tiben, in Batibo, in Guzang, in Ashong, in Inyo. Don't stay behind. Do whatever you can do. Do what it takes to make sure that children are taught. Even if GC exams cannot take place in those villages, the GC board will do everything possible so that there are catchment centers where the children can live and write the exams when it is exam time. Nobody should stay behind. Thanks enormously to everybody, community leaders who have made efforts and are encouraging children to go back to school. We cannot continue like this. We would simply be preparing another time bomb for the future.
Okay, we want to thank you all who have taken time off to watch the program, the production team. Many of you are already requesting for the document. After the program, I'm going to forward the document to all of you who have made the request. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.
Welcome to a new world of TV broadcasting. My Major Pride.